Not one, not two. How about three commitments for Texas football over the weekend? Where's LeBron when you need him? We'll talk about the newest additions to the Longhorns class of 2026 on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin native, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your Longhorn friends about Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Not sure if you've heard, but Texas softball won a national championship over the weekend. We'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about how Friday's federal court ruling impacts the future of Texas football and the Longhorns athletic department as a whole. That's all coming up a little bit later in today's show. But first, it was a tremendously successful recruiting weekend for Texas football. And I should say first, apologies, my voice isn't all the way there today. Been battling the crud over these last few days, so I don't sound the same. Maybe I was just yelling at my TV too much, rooting on the Longhorn softball team in Oklahoma City, but wanted to throw that disclaimer out there. Apologies for my voice not being all the way there. Appreciate y'all bearing with me. All right, tremendously successful weekend for Texas football on the recruiting front as the Longhorns landed three commits for the class of 2026 during the big official visit weekend that just went down here in Austin. We previewed it last week. Texas had 13 recruits in town. Two of them were already committed to the Longhorns going into the weekend, and by weekend's end, three more had given their commitments as well. We will go in chronological order, talking about the three newest pickups for Steve Sarkisian and company in the class of 2026, beginning with the four-star defensive lineman Dylan Berymon from the state of Louisiana, 6'2", 6'3", anywhere from 315 to 325 pounds, depending on which recruiting site that you look at. He was committed to Texas, he was in Austin this weekend and committed to Texas before he left. And this is a big get for Texas going into the Bayou State and getting somebody that LSU wanted. That's not easy to do. LSU is the only power school in the state of Louisiana. They do a tremendous job year in and year out of keeping their in-home talent at home. Yet Texas, once again, able to go into the state of Louisiana, just like it did with Arch Manning, just like it did with Derek Williams Jr., like Barron Sorrell, like Malcolm Roach. The Longhorns have done pretty well recruiting the Bayou State in recent years, and Texas was able to land the commitment of Dylan Berymon, the 22nd ranked defensive lineman in the class of 2026. He is a top 175 player nationally, just a big body for the interior of the Texas defensive line, a guy who's going to play a lot of 0-and-1 technique during his time at Texas. He's never a guy who's going to stuff the stat sheet, but a guy who's going to help his teammates on the defensive line and just on the entire Texas defense by eating up blockers and doing the dirty work in the trenches. This is a big-time get. Our friends at Horns 24/7 were able to catch up with Dylan Berymon after he announced his commitment, and they asked him why Texas. Berymon said, quote, "I felt like it was home. I like the culture and that everybody is buying into Texas football," end quote. He also talked about the Texas coaches as well, giving high praise to Kenny Baker, who has done a phenomenal job as the Texas defensive line coach. You look at the class that he was able to bring in with Justice Terry, Myron Charles, and Josiah Sharma, three blue chippers in this class of 2025. You also look at the five defensive linemen that Texas was able to add through the transfer portal this offseason, and you couple that with the job Kenny Baker did on the field with the 2024 Texas Longhorns, getting the most out of Alfred Collins, getting the most out of Vernon Broughton, and turning those guys into day 2 draft picks in the NFL draft. Kenny Baker has only been here for a little bit more than a year. He has done a phenomenal job as the defensive line coach at the University of Texas, and he gets a lot of credit for this pickup. Alan Clark, one of the new assistants on this Texas staff who came over from Ohio State. He's from New Orleans. He has plenty of ties within that state of Louisiana, he also deserves a lot of credit being able to get Dylan Berymon to announce his commitment to Texas over LSU and other competitors from around the country. And how about this? It's good enough news that Dylan Berymon has committed to UT. He also said that he is going to come back to Austin the weekend of June 20th for that big official visit weekend to help recruit other recruits to come to Texas. A little peer recruiting from Dylan Berymon. You love that. He's going to come on his own dime back here in a couple of weeks, which means he's canceled all of his other OVs that he had planned. He's coming back to Austin, and he is going to help the Longhorns try to add more to this class of 2026. Look, the coaches can recruit. They can only do so much. You need the current guys on your roster, and you need some of the other recruits to help do their part to try to convince some of these back and forth players to ultimately sign with Texas. Dylan Berymon has basically closed his recruitment to the rest of the country and said that he is going to help the Longhorns add more in this cycle. So great news there. Dylan Berymon, a big-time pickup for Texas, a big body on the teeth of that Texas defensive lineman. That was commit number one. Commit number two, three-star wide receiver Kohen Brown, who was also in town this weekend. A Texas kid from Waxahachie up north near the Metroplex, a one-time USC commit. Texas didn't offer Kohen Brown until May 13th. At that time, Brown was committed to the Trojans. Less than a week later, he decommitted from Lincoln Riley and USC. It kind of felt like the writing's been on the wall from that moment on. He picked Texas yesterday. 6 foot, 190 pounds, according to the recruiting sites. 54 catches, 1,084 yards, and 11 touchdowns as a junior for Waxahachie High School this past season. Of course, has 1 year left of high school ball. He does have visits scheduled to Notre Dame and Ole Miss. We'll see if he takes those or if he does what Dylan Berymon is doing and kind of shuts down his recruitment. But, man, this is a guy, even though he's only a three-star, was getting looks and interest from a number of big-time programs around the nation. Not super highly touted, only the 84th ranked receiver in this class, but any Longhorn fan knows that you should never sleep on the three stars. Texas has had a ton of success with three-star players in recent years. Heck, look at Gunnar Helm. I know a different position, but still a pass catcher. That guy was a three-star pickup for Texas coming out of high school, and he ended up setting tight end records for the most catches and receiving yards in a single season with what he did at 2024. You don't have to look at just tight end. You can look at a number of different positions on the Texas roster during the Steve Sarkisian era to see some tremendous development going on. Devondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, a couple more examples of lesser heralded players on the recruiting trail. Trey Wisner. We can go on and on. Point is, don't sleep on the three-star. And I think Kohen Brown's a little bit underrated. I think he could end up as a four-star before this cycle is all said and done. But regardless, this is a big-time pickup for Texas football, adding to that wide receiver room. The Longhorns have done a phenomenal job with Steve Sarkisian and Chris Jackson at bringing in high-level talent at wide receiver. And the beat goes on for Texas at one of the most important positions on the offensive side of the football. So Kohen Brown was commitment number 2 for the Horns over the weekend. And last but not least, Texas adds a commit from the second-ranked kicker in the country for the class of 2026. Don't laugh. You're a Texas fan. You know how important special teams can be. Cost the Longhorns an SEC championship this past year. Nearly cost Texas against Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. You have to have a good kicking game when you are competing for conference and national championships because you're going to be playing a lot of close games where every point matters. Making sure that your kicking game is where it needs to be. Very important for Jeff Banks and the future of the Texas football program. Of course, the Longhorns went out and got the grad transfer Mason Shipley from Texas State to replace Bert Auburn. Shipley only has 1 year of eligibility remaining. Will Stone, who you would think is also going to be competing for the kicker spot. He's the kickoff specialist for Texas. He was the guy who replaced Bert Auburn in that Ohio State game in the college football playoff. He's going into his senior year, so he's into his final year of eligibility as well. So both of those guys gone after 2025. Texas needing a more long-term answer at kicker. And Jake Collett, I don't even know if I mentioned his name yet. I keep calling him the number 2 kicker in the country and talking about how important he is. Should mention the guy's name. Jake Collett from the state of Georgia is now a part of the Longhorns class of 2026. So Texas has 2 special teamers committed in this class. The long snapper, Trot O'Neal, and also a kicker with Jake Collett, who again ranks as the second overall kicker in the country, according to Cole's Kicking, which is one of the highest regarded kicking and punting grading services out there on the recruiting trail. The on threes, the 24/7s, the rivals of the world, they don't spend a whole lot of time on those specialists. Cole's Kicking, I don't think we're talking about the department store. Could be wrong, but they do a good job of ranking the best specialists in America. And according to them, this is a big-time pickup for Texas. So we'll see what the Longhorns do in terms of 2026. Maybe they go to the transfer portal again for just next year in a vacuum. But again, special teams, really, really important. I will never knock this coaching staff for adding guys for that third facet of the game. So there you go. 11 players now committed for the Longhorns in this class of 2026 after the 3 additions from the weekend. The class currently ranks number 20 in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. We're just getting started. Of course, the Longhorns ended up with the number 1 class in the nation last year. They did a lot of their work over the summer and into the fall. I fully expect Texas to rise up the rankings. We'll see if they end up at number 1, but I feel very, very confident that the Horns are going to end up with another top 5. I'd even say top 3 class under Steve Sarkisian. 2 more massive visit weekends coming up over these next 2 weeks. Around 15 to 17 targets will be in town this coming weekend. We'll talk about some of the names more as this week moves along. All right. Not sure if you've heard, but Texas softball won a national championship on Friday night. We will give some much-deserved love to Mike White and the Texas softball team when we return right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at FanDuel. The NBA Finals are in full swing. Oklahoma City evened the score last night with a 16-point win in Game 2 over Indiana. If you had OKC on FanDuel, then you're sitting pretty. Your wallet's a little bit fatter today. Hey, the good news is we got plenty of games left in this series. It's only tied 1-1. This thing could be going on for a while. And our friends at FanDuel are giving you more ways to win on the NBA Finals than ever before. You can bet before tip-off, but you can also bet after the game goes live. Performance trends, same-game parlays, in-game betting. I'm telling you, FanDuel is hooking you up. The chances to win are bigger and better now than they have ever been in the past. If you think Oklahoma City is going to continue to roll, if you like the underdog Pacers to get it done, if you think SGA is going to have another big night in Game 3 on Wednesday, it doesn't matter. You can bet it all on FanDuel. And right now, our friends at FanDuel are hooking you up. If you're a first-time customer, head over to FanDuel.com. You place your first $5 bet, and if that wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets just like that. That's right. FanDuel.com. You place a $5 bet. If that hits, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. For the first time in program history, Texas softball is national champions. The Longhorns smoked Texas Tech in the winner-take-all Game 3 of the Women's College World Series Finals on Friday night. 10-4, the final score. It started early for Texas. Nyjah Kennedy, the all-everything pitcher who was really good in Game 1, was really good in Game 2 for Texas Tech. She got the start again, pitched 3 straight days for Texas Tech. She looked tired. And Texas, after struggling to get the bats going in Games 1 and 2, they got the bats going early and often in Game 3. How about a 5 spot in the first inning? Reese Atwood started things off with an RBI single to make it 1-0. Katie Stewart followed up with an RBI single of her own to make it 2-0. And then Leanne Good, the Longhorn shortstop, involved in that Game 1 controversy with her tag at second base. She delivers a 3-run home run just over the wall to break it open. That gave Texas a 5-0 lead, and that knocked Nyjah Kennedy out of the game. The $1 million arm, who also agreed to another 7-figure NIL deal for next year to return to Texas Tech. I wonder if that got in her head a little bit, or hey, maybe it's just Texas was really good, and they had seen Nyjah Kennedy a couple of times on the 2 previous days. They'd figured some things out. They switched up their approach, and they got to her early. And again, 5-0. I know it was the first inning, but with the way Tegan Cavan had been pitching for the Longhorns in Oklahoma City, that game was over. But hey, for good measure, the Horns piled on. Katie Stewart, an RBI double, made it 6-0. And then Mia Scott, playing on one ACL, hits the dagger of all daggers, a grand slam, no doubter to straightaway center field in the 4th inning. That made it 10-0, and the route was officially on. Texas was nice. They could have run ruled Texas Tech. They gave the Red Raiders a few runs to make things a little bit more favorable. They made the burn a little bit slower. Instead of this game ending in 5 innings, it ended in 7. But the Longhorns, they dominated Game 3. They left no doubt about who the better team was, and Texas wins the national championship. The 3rd time was the charm for Texas softball. It was the 3rd trip for the Horns to the Women's College World Series final in the last 4 years. They finally get over the hump and win it all. For head coach Mike White, I believe it was his 8th trip to Oklahoma City as a head coach. Some of that happened at Oregon. Some of those trips obviously happened at Texas, and he's finally able to win it all. But man, you got to talk about Tegan Cavan, the most outstanding player of the Women's College World Series, and rightfully so. She pitched 31 2/3 innings in OKC. She gave up 0 earned runs. That is a WCWS record. The previous best was 27 2/3 innings without an earned run. Again, she went 31 2/3 innings without giving up an earned run. Texas played 5 games in Oklahoma City. She won 4 of them. The one game she didn't win, that Texas won, she got the save. So she had a hand in the result in all 5 of the Longhorns' victories. She finished the season with a 28-5 record and a 2.16 ERA. And all this talk about Nyjah Kennedy this, Nyjah Kennedy that. Look, she's great. Don't get me wrong. But Tegan Cavan and Nyjah Kennedy played each other 5 times in the last 2 years. Tegan Cavan went 5-0 against Kennedy, and she had an ERA of 0.19 in those games with 39 strikeouts. Nyjah Kennedy, 0-5. ERA was 3, only 32 strikeouts. So, yeah, whatever Nyjah Kennedy's making in Lubbock next year, Tegan Cavan has a case to be making more here in Austin. And maybe the best part of Texas winning it all this year, man, Tegan Cavan has 2 more years of eligibility left. She's only a sophomore. Reese Atwood's back for another year. I mean, Texas is losing a couple of key pieces, don't get me wrong, but they've got a bunch of returning players for the 2026 squad. So thinking the Longhorns could run it back and go back-to-back, not too far out of the question. Shout out to Mia Scott. Again, the huge grand slam. She went 5 for 8 in the Women's College World Series final, playing on a torn ACL, had 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, played some incredible defense at third base. I mean, it was awesome. Just an awesome run for Texas softball. They end the year 56-12. And it's crazy the turnaround for this team. They got smoked. They got run ruled in the SEC tournament. And it was like, oh, my God, what are we going to get in the real tournament? Maybe this team is struggling a little bit. Felt like they were limping into the big dance, and they swept through the Austin Regional. But then in the Super Regional against Clemson, Texas lost Game 1. They needed extra innings to win Game 2. Speaking of Tegan Cavan and her greatness, Game 2 in the 8th inning, Clemson was the designated home team in that game, even though it was in Austin. Clemson had the bases loaded, nobody out in a tie game. If Clemson scores 1 run off of Tegan Cavan, game over, series over, season over for Texas. Cavan's able to wiggle out of it. Texas goes on to win that game in 10. They win Game 3 to get to the College World Series, and then they go, 5-1 in Oklahoma City. The only loss in Game 2, of course, to Texas Tech. But what a ride. What a team. Congrats to Coach White, his entire staff. Congrats to, Tegan Cavan and Reese Atwood and Mia Scott and Leanne Good and Jolie Mitchell and everybody. I don't have enough time to mention every single name, but what a fun run it was. The tower was lit over the weekend. A big celebration at McCombs Field on Saturday night to welcome back the national champs. And that was a ton of fun to watch over these last few weeks. So tip of the cap to Texas softball, the first of what is hopefully many national championships in softball, and putting a bow on just a tremendous year 1 for Texas in the SEC. Softball winning it all, men's swimming and diving winning it all. Texas won regular season SEC titles in baseball, women's basketball, men's tennis, women's rowing, and women's swimming and diving. They also won the SEC tournament title in women's soccer. Football made the SEC title game. Men's and women's golf made big run. Yeah, Texas was ready for the SEC. I think it's safe to say. All right, we'll take your thoughts. Comment below with your thoughts on any of these conversations that we've had so far on today's episode. Again, much love to Longhorn softball. One segment to go on a Monday show. A big ruling in the House versus NCAA settlement came down on Friday. We'll give some details on what we know and what it will mean for the future of Texas Longhorn athletics coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. Back here on Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Federal Judge Claudia Wilkin approved the House versus NCAA settlement on Friday afternoon, and this should spearhead big changes around the landscape of college athletics. Some of what will change, we know. Some of what is going to change, we don't know, but this feels like the first time we've actually tried to cap some of what's happening with NIL. It's been the wild, wild west for a couple of years. It's been completely unregulated, and it's caused all sorts of chaos across college sports. I don't have to explain that to anybody who's kept up with college sports in recent years. It has been madness. So maybe this will start putting some of the BBs back in the box around NCAA athletics. Here's what we do know. Number one, the NCAA is going to pay nearly $2.8 billion in back damages over the next 10 years to athletes who competed in college sports from 2016 to 2025. So the NCAA, who for way too long got away with not paying its student athletes anything, despite them cashing in and laughing their way all the way to the bank, they've got to pay, again, nearly $2.8 billion in back damages to student athletes who participated in college sports from 2016 to 2025. I don't know how much that is for each student athlete, but I know any student athlete that wants to get some money is going to be able to get some money from the NCAA. That's one thing. More importantly, moving forward, each school can now pay its athletes up to a certain limit. So we've got revenue sharing that's been talked about for a long time. Now it's officially coming to college sports. And there's a sort of salary cap, if you will, for revenue sharing. That number is expected to start at roughly $20.5 million per school this coming academic year. So we don't have to wait for 3 years, 4 years, 5. No, this is happening starting this next academic year, 2025 and 2026. Again, the number expected to start at 20.5 mil, and it is supposed to increase every year throughout the duration of this decade-long deal. Of course, these new payments are in addition to scholarships and other benefits that athletes already receive. So this doesn't replace the scholars. This is on top of the scholarship. So now this money is coming straight from athletic departments now, and the hope is that this will tamp down the unregulation of paying players through third parties, aka collectives, aka big money boosters who are just forking money out of their pockets to the school's collectives or just to the players directly to try to get players to commit and sign with their favorite schools. We'll see if it works. I mean, this settlement also gives the schools themselves the power to limit the influence of boosters and collectives. Nowadays, new deals between boosters and athletes will be vetted. Again, completely unregulated, uncapped, uneverythinged until now. Now these new name, image, and likeness deals that get worked out between boosters and collectives and the student athletes will need to be vetted by a third party. So I'm giving you a lot here. And I'm still trying to figure out, again, exactly what this all means. I will say this in regards to the University of Texas. You might hear that last statement and say, well, does that mean the Texas One Fund is going away? No. The Texas One Fund is not going away. The One Fund and the University of Texas have a great working relationship that is going to continue well into the future. It's benefited Texas. I think that goes without saying. And the One Fund will continue to find NIL deals for Texas student athletes. So, yeah, there's that salary cap that every school will have that same $20.5 million in revenue sharing money, but schools like Texas will still have a competitive advantage over other schools because, well, they've got a great collective that does a fantastic job in raising money to help, fund NIL deals for Texas student athletes. So that's the good news. The One Fund, which has obviously been huge for Longhorn football and just the entire Longhorn athletic department as a whole, that isn't going anywhere. The rev share formula, roughly 75% of future revenue will be shared with football players, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, and 5% will be split up to all remaining sports. If that sounds unfair, well, football brings in the vast majority of revenue for this athletic department and for athletic departments around the country. So, that's I think a lot of schools are going to follow a similar model to those numbers that we just talked about. The other big change, and again, we might need to dive into this more on future episodes, but scholarship limits are now considered roster limits. So for football, that number is 105. So for years, it's been 85 scholarships, but you've been able to have a roster up to 105 with walk-ons. Now, we'll see. And for this coming year, the SEC, at least as of now, is sticking with 85 scholarships. But you would think moving forward, the SEC is going to adopt what just about every other conference is adopting, and that's the 105 scholarship model that, again, the Big Ten has already announced they're going to do that. I think the Big 12 and ACC are doing the same thing. So eventually the roster size isn't going to change, but it'll be the death of the walk-on in college sports. Every player will be on scholarship for football. And, basketball scholarship numbers are increasing as well to 15. Baseball scholarship numbers are increasing to 34. The overall roster size for baseball is actually shrinking a bit, but the scholarship numbers are going up, which, any big college baseball fan knows that Texas and a lot of other schools have been having to kind of finagle their way through the tiny scholarship numbers. Certain guys have had half scholarships and a third of a scholarship. That stuff's going away. It'll be 34 full scholarships for baseball, 25 for softball. Look, Texas has been preparing for this. I think most good departments have been preparing for this because, again, this has been discussed for a while, and the writing has kind of been on the wall that at some point this summer, this settlement was going to get approved and these changes were going to go into effect. So schools have had time to kind of prep for this stuff, but obviously we will see the type of impact that this settlement has on the future of college sports. But again, revenue sharing coming to college sports, back pay coming to recent student athletes, and new scholarship numbers coming to these sports as well. That's what we know as of right now. We will see how this thing unfolds moving forward. But there's sort of hopefully that was layman enough breakdown on what Friday's ruling means for the future of college sports. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Plenty of Texas football recruiting, Texas softball, House versus NCAA. It was a jam-packed episode. We'll have more about all of this moving forward, and a lot more recruiting nuggets to dive into in regards to Longhorn football as the month of June continues to heat up for Texas on the recruiting trail. But that'll do it for today. If you've made it this far, number one, thank you. Number two, please remember to like, subscribe, share, rate 5 stars, leave a comment, all of those great things. We appreciate y'all's continued support, and we can't thank you enough for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day. Make sure you check out Locked On Portal for your next listen. Brian Smith has all of the latest news, rumors, portal entry signings. He's also talking a ton of recruiting as well in the offseason. You can find the portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. But that will do it for a Monday edition of Locked On Longhorns. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.